years now in my life, I've been consistently playing football, and that's led to a structure in my life. It's led to day in and day out a lot of training, and I believe that's one good thing about sports, because it provides health and things like that. And I know that there's other ways we do sports, maybe for entertainment, and there's also many other ways. Like, I know there's a lot of people here who have consoles. So does anyone here, do you have an Xbox, a gaming PC, or a PlayStation? Now, I want to know, does anyone maybe spend just an hour a day on the PlayStation? So does anyone spend maybe 2 hours or more a day? Okay, so if we added up an hour a day, every single day for a year, can anyone guess how many days that will be worth? Does anyone have a guess? How many days? Okay, guess. Would you have to guess?
46.
No, a bit lower. Anyone else?
32.
A bit low. If you spent go on at the back.
33.
No, it'd be 15 days worth. If you spent an hour a day on a console or something, it'd be 15 days worth of gaming. And if you spent 2 hours, that'd be 30 days. So a whole month basically spent gaming. And I believe all of us here, within 30 dawill all be capable of writing a book, as it's not as hard as you may think. Because I think everyone here has talent within them. And one thing that I've done to get away from those distractions during the summer holidays especially was by setting myself a goal. Because I'm not sure if this happens to many of you here, but during the summer holidays, maybe the first few weeks, you're out with your friends all the time, you find it really exciting. But after a while, does anyone start to get maybe a bit bored of the summer holidays? They start to like even look back to coming back to school. Does that happen? Yeah, that happens to me quite a lot. So over the summer holidays, once to keep myself busy and to get away off gadgets, what I started to do was I set myself a goal that over the summer holidays, I know it sounds like a huge task, it's that I'd write 10 books. And if I hadn't set that goal, there's no way out of my free time I would have just written 10 books. And what made that task even harder was that I was on holiday when we were doing this, so I was abroad. So there would be some days where I'd make myself just sit down for around 4 hours and just start reading and writing and illustrating. And that would take a long while. But since I had the thought of that goal in my mind, it pushed me to complete it. And that's why I believe in like setting goals for yourself, because it pushes you. So say you went on a run, maybe you just went on a run, you'd run like maybe a certain amount, you'd stop when you feel like it. But if you set a goal, no matter how tired you are, you'd keep on running until you finished. And that's the importance of setting goals. And one of the things that's helped in my life, like a lot, like how I said with writing my books. And the thing that I'd like to speak about is also now my books. My first book that I wrote was Tammy and the Shipwreck, which I wrote at the age of 12. And each one of my books are written around life in a series called Life Lessons. And all the books in my Life Lesson series, they're all centered around a moral. And does anyone here know what a moral is? Would you like to answer what a moral is? Would you like to answer or no? Well, anyways, a moral is a lesson that can be taken out from a book. So when young children or anyone from your age, like you, read a book from mine, not only are they having a good read and learning something new, but also they are able to pick up lessons. So for instance, maybe a book that you may relate to, the character in that book has experienced a similar struggle or problem that you may be facing. You could then apply the same method the character used in that book to help you overcome that method as well. And I'd like to move on to my books, but before that, one thing that I'm asked quite often as an author is, what do I enjoy most about being an author? And there's two things. The first thing is, anytime I get an idea, I write it down instantly and I expand on that idea, because I know if I expand it and develop it into a book, I have the security knowing it will be a book, I'll be able to get it published and I can develop it into a book. But the second thing which I enjoy the most about being an author is coming out to schools and speaking to people like you, because I want to see a young generation of authors and I believe it's possible. So my first book, Tammy the Shipwreck, I wrote at the age of 12, and it's basically an adventure about a boy. He's an only child, so he doesn't have siblings to hang around with, so he's quite bored. And he decides to go out and explore, and goes out on a task. But during this adventure that he's on, it gets to a point where he's like at a really hard point in this. He's at a really hard point where many people usually give up and quit. But by persevering and looking for a solution, he's able to get past it and advance. And that's one thing that many people overlook. And the moral in the story is that when you get to somewhere that's hard, a hard situation in life, sometimes you just have to keep going at it to overcome it. And now I'd like to read a short extract from this book. Once there was a boy named Tammy who lived with his parents on the coast. One morning he woke up looking for something adventurous to do because he was bored and had no books to read or toys to play with. He went to his mum and asked her for something to do. She thought about it and then jokingly said, "Well, how about go on an adventure that your great-granddad went on?" This instantly intrigued Tammy, and he was determined to find the treasure, so he went around looking for clues in the house. First he headed to the attic, and as he was walking up there, he realised under a floorboard there was a journal from his grandfather with some instructions to head north. So Tammy prepared for his journey and set off with his backpack and gear. He packed a map, a telescope, binoculars, a journal and some snacks, and the compass attached to the letter. He set out north with his backpacks in hope of finding or going on the same adventure as his grandfather. My second book, which is Rags to Riches, is about a boy named Josh, and he lives with his sister. And basically, him and his sister, they don't get along well because his parents always side with his sister, and he receives a lot of unfair treatment. And eventually, this unfair treatment builds up, and Josh is eventually kicked out of the house. But despite his situation, he doesn't let it define him, and he keeps on moving on. And the moral of the story is to not let your situation define where you are, like not be put down or to give up just because you're somewhere that's low in life. One day there was a boy named Josh who was working hard in the kitchen, sweeping the floor. As he was sweeping the floor, his little sister Leah came up to him and demanded he hand over his money. They just had a massive party and their aunt came and gave them many gifts and money. Like always, Leah had finished her money. Josh was very tired as he'd been cleaning all day and his little sister just played games and went out with her friends. He was tired of being bossed around by his sister, and despite her being the favourite child, he finally put his foot down and said no. This set Leah into a rage, and she squealed and cried until their parents came downstairs to sort things out. Josh told his parents the full story, and to his surprise, they defended Leah. Josh's mum told him, be a good big brother for once. Josh, can't you see what you've done? You've made your little sister cry. Give her your money now. She needs them more than you. He said no to both his sister and his parents, and his mum asked him again, but he said no once more. His mother then told him that as he was not willing to share with his sister, they are not willing to share their house with him, so he was kicked out. Left on the streets all alone, Josh had to fend for himself. Luckily, he found a friend named Thomas, and they were able to start building themselves up. My third book, The Dreamer, is the third book in my life lesson series, and it's about these two twin brothers called Braden and James. And the two of them, they've grown up in a circus together, and they've been left there at birth. But however, Braden has a vision and a calling of basketball. It's something that he's deeply passionate about, and he really loves the sport. And one day he has the decision of whether he should leave his brother behind the circus and pursue his dreams, or if he'll stay here for the rest of his life. And the moral of this story is that sometimes you have to sacrifice things in life to get to your goal, and you might have to give up time or cut relationships with other people to get to the top. There were once twin brothers, Braden and James, who lived in a circus together. It had been their home ever since they were born. James was obedient and always feared the ringmaster. He was determined to live in the circus and make the best of it. On the other hand, Braden had discovered a deep love for basketball, even though his brother James wasn't fond of it. There was only one problem. Braden couldn't leave the circus now that they belonged to the ringmaster. Even if he escaped, he had nowhere to go. One day, when the show was being hosted in the Big Top, he made a friend named William. He promised them that he would smuggle them out of the circus and let them join his basketball club. Braden was excited and agreed without batting an eyelid, but his brother was unsure and decided to stay at the circus. William realised the hard decision Braden had to make and told him the way to his house in case he changed his mind. Braden didn't want to see his brother upset and waited until the dead of night before finding his new friend. Before he went, he left a note to his brother to explain how he felt about his calling towards basketball. The next day, Braden found William playing in his front garden and joined him on his way to practice. William's coach took a liking to Braden and saw the potential in him, but knew there was much work needed for him to become the best. Day after day, Braden put in hard work and would be the first to come to training and the last to leave. He trained every day and was the unsung hero of his team. My fourth book, The Step Brothers, is about a boy named Andrew who's been adopted by a family. And in his family, Andrew has a new family and everything is going well. However, his new stepbrother feels threatened by the presence of him and he starts to show hatred and resentment towards his brother. And in the end, it leads him to doing multiple bad things towards his brother, and only towards the end of the story does he realize what his jealousy has done to him and the relationship between him and his stepbrother. The moral in this story is to show that sometimes you have to forgive others, and also you have to don't be so harsh on others. You have to be understanding, and forgiveness is always key. Andrew was only 1 month old when he was left outside the adoption care centre. All he was left with was a pendant from his mum. The orphanage was Andrew's home for 4 years until he was adopted by a family. He was happy with his new family and was all he'd ever asked for. The only problem was his new stepbrother Tom. Tom never wanted his parents to adopt a child since he didn't want to lose their love, so he plotted against Andrew. Growing up, Tom always picked on Andrew. Like one time they were at the fun fair together, their dad both gave them some money to spend, but Tom wanted Andrew's money and he threatened Andrew, and despite it starting off small, it started to grow. There was also another incident as they became older, when Tom took their dad's car out to a party and scratched it and blamed it on Andrew. This got Andrew in serious trouble for a month, but was too nervous to tell and get himself out of trouble. The older Tom got, the worse he became, and so did the friends he hung out with. He started stealing and vandalising things with friends. On the inside, Tom knew what he was doing was wrong, but he still blamed everything on his brother. My fifth book, The Wartime, is about a boy called Evan, and his father works in the army, and whilst he's out and about, he finds a friend who's from a neighbouring country, and one day he finds out that his father had been killed in war by someone from that country, and he starts to build hate and resentment towards people from that country, and in the end he decides to stop speaking to his friend despite her not having an effect in anything. And the moral that I put in this story is to not let some actions of others to affect your relationship with other people. And I've seen many friends around me in school who maybe they've been laughed at and something happens that can't be controlled by someone and they take it out on someone else. But I believe that it's very wrong, and for that you should always forgive others and give them a second chance even if they are wrong. There was once a boy named Evan who lived on a hill. He lived the life of a prince. His dad was a high-ranking officer and the king's right-hand man. Evan was an only child and spent most of his time with his grandma. She loved him ever so much and always taught him valuable lessons. Since Evan was homeschooled, he didn't have many friends, so he'd always go out to the woods near the border, which is where he met a new friend, Leanne. Leanne was his only friend, and she came from the neighbouring country. She also came from a well-known family from the other country, and she had attended many meetings with their family where they'd meet. After that day, they would always meet near the woods on the border, and it went like this for years. And despite them being from different neighbouring countries that despised each other, they were still best of friends. One day, something awful happened. The two countries had declared war on each other, and no one was allowed to even go close to the border, or they'd be killed on sight. Evan wasn't able to visit Leanne anymore. He was even more heartbroken when he found out his father had to go to war. After years of death and bloodshed, the war was over. However, Evan's father had died. My sixth book, The Run for Gold, is a book about a boy named Gordon. And Gordon has many great dreams. He has great aspirations of becoming an Olympic athlete. But the way he lives doesn't line up with those goals, and he's quite overweight, and he's known to work hard to get in shape. But despite this fact, Gordon still thinks he can make it. He wants to make it in the Olympics, so he decides to apply for the Olympics at his school, the Olympic trials, and because of the fact that he's not prepared, he doesn't do well. And at first, Gordon lets this put him down, and he stops going to school for a while, and he's quite downcast and sad. However, one day he comes across a video, and this inspires him. And in my book, I put the person as a video who inspires him as my mum, because I find her as an inspirational figure. And in this book, he becomes inspired, and he starts to make a change in his life because he still believes in this goal. And in the end, he's able to turn things around and shows up at the next trial event and is able to perform well. And the moral of the story is to make sure that if you have a goal, you have to make sure that all the actions you do align with that goals, because you can't say you want to do one thing and do the other. And now I'd like to read a short extract from this book. Once there was a boy named Gordon who wanted nothing more than to be an Olympic athlete when he was older. Growing up, Gordon enjoyed watching the Olympics and all the amazing athletes who performed in it. On this particular occasion, while watching the 2012 Olympics, he was greatly inspired by his favourite athlete and role model, Usain Bolt, who was once again the gold medal winner at the 100 metres. So one day he decided he wanted to be an Olympic athlete as well and win a gold medal in the 100 metre sprint. The dream of his intensified as he grew up and grew strong, and it grew stronger after he watched Usain Bolt effortlessly win his third consecutive gold medal. There was only one problem. Gordon was always bullied for his weight, so he decided to change it. One day he decided to go out and train at the gym. When he got there, a group of bullies approached him. Their ringleader was a boy named Brad who bullied Gordon constantly, and Gordon decided to stop training as he was afraid of other people's opinions. My seventh book, which is The Hunger for Fame, is about a book, and it takes place in a school setting, and it's about two friends called Harry and Brandon, and they grew up together in primary school, and they were really close friends. But despite being close friends, they had different personalities. Brandon was a really outgoing and lively person who, compared to Harry, who was really shy and nervous in everything that he'd done. But over time, they only grew closer and they managed to work out their differences. However, as they got to high school, as they got to secondary school, many things changed. And Brandon, he was loved by many people for his behaviour, for his personality, and his friend Harry was often bullied. And as Brandon got the taste of popularity with all his friends, he started to unassociate himself with Brandon, but things only got worse as he started to end up bullying his friend Harry, even though they'd been close friends. And the main message from the story, which I think many people may face now, is that bullying is wrong in general, and that it's always good to stay loyal to your friends. Once upon a time, there were two friends who, despite their different natures, had been friends for many years. Harry was a shy and meek person who stuck to his roots, while Brandon was an outgoing person who, no matter what challenges they faced, they'd always stuck together. They'd shared such a wonderful experience together in primary school, but now their friendship faced a new challenge: transition to secondary school. In the boys' new school, Brandon was loved by many people for his outgoing personality, but things were quite different for Harry. People realised Harry did not have any sort of backbone, and because bullies took advantage of this, he was constantly bullied and made fun of. When Brandon saw this, he did not tolerate it at first at all and wanted to stop it. However, his new friends told him not to help or he would also be bullied, and slowly Brandon started to change. My eighth book, which is The Fascinating Footballer, is a book that was inspired by one of my stories because I was also playing football, and in the story, a boy named James, he was playing football, he's a good player, but when he started to reach high levels in his football playing, he suddenly experienced an injury and was out for around a few years, and every time he went to the doctor, he was only given bad news about how he'd be out for a few years and how he'd need surgery, and this news often had him downcasted and feeling upset. However, James believed that he could heal naturally, and he dedicated himself to working hard, committing himself to building up again, and he was able to successfully heal. And this story, it relates to me because a year ago during the lockdown, I was closely involved playing with Everton at their squad, and unfortunately I experienced an injury myself which had me out for 2 years. However, I stayed dedicated, and every day after school I'd go swimming and cycling to strengthen my knee, and that resulted in me being able to come back to one of the things I love the most. There was once a young boy named James who was very well known for his outstanding football skills. He was the best player on his team. Things were going well for James, and they kept on getting better and better for him as his skills were growing and he was attracting more attention from bigger clubs. One day, James was called up for a match, and he was told there'd be many scouts willing to give young players like him a contract. Throughout the match, he was able to amaze all the scouts and was given trials. On James's big match to determine his spot in the team, disaster struck. As the ball rolled towards the middle of the pitch, everyone ran towards the ball, and James got to there first. But people were still rushing towards him, and someone slid in and bent his knee backwards. James screamed in agony and could not bear the pain, and everything went black. He was on the side of the pitch, but when he tried to get up, his leg just gave up on him. Little did James know this would be a moment that would change his life. And finally, for my final book, this book is about also a football player. It's called The Football Prodigy. It's about a boy named Michael who he has a dream of becoming a footballer. However, his parents, they want him to become a doctor, and they force this dream on him, and where they come from, it's looked down upon to be a footballer, and they believe they want him to be a doctor. However, Michael decides to follow his dreams, and he pushes himself, and he goes against what his parents expected of him, and he followed his own dreams. And the moral of this is to not be pressured into making decisions that aren't of your own or don't benefit you, and you should always choose what's best for you and something that you're passionate about. There was once a child named Michael who lived in a small village in the west of Africa. As a little boy, Michael fell in love with the game of football and decided he would play when he grew up. One of Michael's biggest challenges was convincing his parents and family that football was as important as other careers and that it could be a successful career path for him. The main problem was that where he lived, football wasn't viewed as a good career, so many of his friends and family made fun of him. Regardless of what anyone said, Michael was determined to become the best player in the world. As a young boy, he already started working hard towards his goal. He did everything he could to make sure his dream became a reality. He would wake up in the morning and put in the work training every single day. When his parents saw him taking football career seriously, it angered them as they wanted him to become a doctor. So when Michael turned 10, his parents banned him from ever playing football again. This deeply upset him because he'd always wanted his family to support him for his dreams. Despite his parents' disapproval, he decided he would not let them stop him. He would then start waking up in the middle of the night to play football and train. This went on for months without anyone catching him, but then one day his father caught him training in the middle of the night, and he was in serious trouble. I leave, I'd like to tell everyone that one piece of advice is to always watch the people who you surround yourselves with and make sure they're people who can push you to be better and do better. And this advice has really personally helped me in my life, because despite being the second oldest child, I was the last out of all my family to publish a book. Because it started off with my mum, obviously, who published her first book. And when she did do this, my older sister then saw her publish her book, and she decided, I want to write my book as well. And when my sister did publish her book, she was the first child author that I'd seen, and that did inspire me a bit. And I started the writing here and then, but I never really set a goal to finish my book, and my focus was never fully there. So I kept on pushing it and procrastinating, saying, oh, I'll write my book later. And then soon, out of nowhere, my little sister came up and published her first book out of nowhere before me. And then that's when all I was hearing in the house was, oh, all the girls have published books, and oh, you're not capable of publishing books. So I decided that one day I'd sit down, I was going to write my book. And within the span of 2 weeks, I'd finished writing my first book. And also, not only have I benefited from the people who I've surrounded myself with, but I've also pushed others. As when I went on holiday and set the goal to write 10 books, I was surrounded by my friends and my cousin and family. And my younger cousin, when he saw me constantly writing, he was also inspired, because there'd be times when I'd just sit down and start writing, and he joined me. And my younger cousin, who'd never thought about writing a book, before we left to go back, he'd also finished writing his first book. And that just shows that all of you here, each one of you, I believe, is more than capable of writing your book. I'd like to thank you all, and is there any questions anyone would like to ask? Yeah.
How many books have you got?
I've got 9 books here, but I've got the other 10 that I've written during the summer. I've still got 7 of them that I need to be published. Is there any more questions? Yes. Oh, you can go. Yeah.
How did you speak so well, you didn't stutter?
Usually it's just to do with confidence, and it's about me, so I'm quite confident about speaking about myself, and also a bit of practice as well. Would you? Yeah.
I asked the same question of your sister Destiny, but I just want to know what message you would have for young people of your age who feel like they can't connect to books, like they struggle to get into reading, and maybe they feel like they don't have time. What message would you give them to encourage them to get into reading, get into books?
I've touched on this slightly before, but reading is a way to really, it's a way of entertainment as well. I really enjoy it, and it's not always just picking out the first book you read, the first book you see, or reading the biggest book, but it's also about finding something you enjoy, because reading, I don't just do it just for the knowledge, but I also do it because the books I pick are books that I enjoy and that entertain me. So to me, it's just as good as maybe playing games or watching a video. Yes.
What do you love about writing your books?
What I love about writing my books is it's a way of expressing my ideas and spreading messages, but also, like I said before, coming here, speaking to many students and interacting with people like you. Who would you like to speak?
Yeah, what's your favourite book and why? The one you've read?
That I've read, or there's quite a lot of books. As I was younger, I really enjoyed the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series, and I've read a few Roald Dahl books, but there's quite a lot of books that I've read. I think my favourite few, because I couldn't pick one, it'd have to be, I read this Grandpa's Great Escape. I read that when I was quite younger, and also a book I had read about Pele when I was younger. Is there any more question? No. Thank you.